No, it's fine. Really, it is. I didn't think it'd be so Japanese. Deltarune Chapter 5, that's coming in like a week or so. Honestly, it's a lot longer of a heads up than I kind of thought we were gonna get. I didn't think it was just gonna be shadow dropped, and then Toby Fox was gonna tweet, "Guys, it's out now," and that's why I kind of want to do like just a little video real quick, just kind of talking about a bunch of random stuff I think about the chapter right before it comes out, and let's talk about some like predictions and stuff that I have. As you can tell, this is very unscripted. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I have like 60 words worth of notes down here. But before I get to those predictions, I do think it's kind of interesting to talk about Chapter 5 and, like, what it seems to be doing. And, like, kind of like some of the directions I think it's going to go. The main stuff especially, I think tonally, that's, like, the main thing I was so confused about with Chapter 5. Because Chapter 4, it ended on, like, such a down, just, like, a sad scene of, like, hey, we're all going to die or something. Obviously, we don't know what that last prophecy is, but it really messed up Susie and Ralsei. So, obviously, it's probably something kind of bad. And there's that weird little shadow crystal text that has Chris kind of looking at the last prophecy panel in that room. God, I cannot. I must refrain from going on insane tangents about shadow crystals. But anyways, so yeah, after that like just really sad chapter, and knowing that we had the festival next chapter, I was like kind of like not sure what they were gonna do. But the newsletter came out, and the newsletter just kind of said, hey, we're gonna try and not be sad because yesterday was sad, and that was sad, and I don't want to be sad. So we're gonna be happy for our last happy adventure. And that line especially, I don't know it off the top of my head, that line especially talking about like, dang, everything's gonna suck from now on. Because I think quite obviously, there is gonna be like a decent thing of like the chapter being like, hey guys, let's try and have some fun. And then something happens and they kind of have to start facing reality. Like as stupid as it is, I do think that recent post of Jockington getting a beard might come up in some way. Like, maybe not directly, because that Jockington room was optional, but just kind of in the way that it's like, Chris, Susie says something like, Chris, that prophecy's stupid. It's not real. All the stuff it said, that already happened. The prophecy only knows what happened in the past, because it's stupid. And they look at Jockington, and he has a beard. It's like, well, the prophecy predicted that, so damn. That sucks. I think that'll be just, like, kind of an interesting dynamic. Some other things that I think are pretty interesting is Asgore. Asgore as a character in Deltarune is... Once again, I'm going to say the word interesting a lot, so I really just don't have, like, a specific word to say, like, oh, this is an idea in the story that's captivating to me. But Asgore in Deltarune is, like, the complete opposite of what he was in Undertale. I think every character that was in Undertale is fairly similar to, like, what they did. Sans, he's kind of like a jokey guy, he has, like, a job that he half-asses. Toriel, very, like, a teacher, motherly kind of character. But then Asgore, in Undertale, he was forced to do something. He was, like, driven by a duty that he has to other people. People are relying on him. But in Deltarune, no one's relying on him. Everyone has basically turned their back on Asgore, and he has to now prove himself. So I think that dynamic was especially something. And there's also, like, okay, I haven't seen many people talk about this, but in terms of the night, okay, this is gonna sound really weird, but I think chapter 3, 4, and 5 had this, like, interesting dynamic of, like, obviously setting up the night, and then kind of, like, trailing along different candidates. I think chapter 2/3, like at the end of chapter 2 and then like most of chapter 3, it was leading you to think it was Chris. Tennant talks about this deal that we had, and then later on he says, oh, I had this deal with the Knight. So for a brief second, even though he gets completely destroyed 5 seconds after saying his deal with the Knight, but like he's talking about this deal that he has with the Knight. And then Chris made the Dark Fountain, and before chapter 2, the only person that was really said to make fountains was the Knight. So chapter 2 and 3, that made you think Chris was the Knight. And in chapter 4, I think Carol's kind of like led to be that kind of candidate, but also Susie has that line talking about someone that's close to the mayor, goes to church, and is involved with the police. And obviously those are all three Asgore things. I think the police one's not as obvious. I don't think like the game really brings that up too much to like your average player. But either way, I think Asgore is kind of set up to be this like Knight fake out candidate in chapter 5, and obviously has that dialogue talking about, oh, this black shard. So there's something there. I really don't know what the payoff is for these like fake Knight candidates for people that are like really paying attention, but obviously I think that's something that the game is doing. I think the last thing I kind of want to talk about is just like really like random thing that I saw online. People talking about, oh, this feather in the trailer. That's the pen of hope. But that's not a pen. That's a feather. Barely even a quill. I think that'll kind of, I think this new chapter is kind of pushing us towards this, like, more angel stuff, if that makes sense. Like, so far we've had, like, brief mentions of an angel of some kind. Chapter 4 obviously had that prophecy room saying, oh, that's the angel right there. And Susie's like, what the fuck am I looking at? What? Oh, what? Oh. And so I think these feathers might kind of tie into, like angel wings or something, I guess, if that makes sense. Because there's also an unused item in the game called the Holy Mantle. So I think this might have something to do with that. Either way, holy attacks are something in the game that's going to be happening, so we're fighting angels or something. Anyways, that was like a bit of like random preamble before I get into like actual like solid predictions that I have and like substantial things that I want to say. I think the first prediction I have is kind of like a really small, stupid one. I think Ralsei is going to have his hat for this chapter. I think like the question then is like, well, why? Not like, why do you think this, like, you know, what does this add to the game, the story? Ralsei just having his hat for some reason. But I guess the first thing that makes me think this is actually three. I guess one, Asgore is going to be a major part of this chapter. And I guess maybe Ralsei wouldn't want to, like, I guess, you know, be like looking like Asgore, if that makes sense, I guess. I guess that might just be like an awkward scene or whatever. But then I think the second part is there's that old Twitter post where Toby said something about Ralsei getting mixed up in flowers, and then we have these flowers that are like very close to Asgore. You know, he talks to them and all that. They're related to the you know, like the human souls almost. Like they have that like same color of like the human souls back in Undertale, which I don't think they're like one to one gonna be like oh it's the human souls from Undertale, it's them. But then there's also that attack from the knives in the trailer, so I don't know. I didn't think this chapter was gonna do too much, just like writing off of Undertale. But also, I kind of did. I did think like nostalgia was gonna be like a big theme, like it was gonna like reference Undertale a decent bit. The last thing that makes me think Hat Ralsei is, for some reason, at this part of the trailer, I'm gonna have it on screen right now. When you're fighting this weird plant boss, there's like this bar below Ralsei, so it's like obviously, oh, part of the trailer is edited in, and you can especially see this when later the screen shakes and you can see Susie's sprite on the bottom layer be like shown for a split second. So for some reason, that part of the trailer is being obfuscated, and the reason I think it's being obfuscated is because Ralsei has his hat. You know, they're gonna try and hide that. They don't hide it too well. Actually, they hid it well, but just the fact that something's being hidden wasn't hidden too well, if that makes sense. I said I really can't think of any like story reasons. I think maybe, okay, I do think slight backpedal here. I do think this chapter is gonna be kind of Ralsei focused. Chapter 3 was kind of Chris focused. You know, you had the mantle game, you had the night fight, which kind of revealed the night fight into the shelter scene at the end, which kind of revealed, oh, Chris is kind of an evil little bastard, and they're doing some shady shit. And Chapter 4 was quite obviously Susie focused. There's a lot of scenes with like her and Noelle, you know, in the light world, while Chris does whatever the hell. And then obviously a large part of the dark world was Susie kind of like coming into like, you know, being like more heroic. Anyways, the point is, obviously, you know, the Gerson fight is just Susie. Either way, very Susie focused chapter. The end scene with her punching the prophecy panel sets up a lot of, I think, like later details of like, hey, we're gonna try and say fuck this prophecy because this prophecy's stupid. And then once again, chapter 3 and 4, I keep saying once again. In chapter 3 and 4, fun fact, this is kind of a fact that I think gets left behind sometimes, especially when talking about, you know, some other stuff I'm going to reference later. Chapters 3, 4, and 5, they were going to be released all together at once. That ended up not happening was because Deltarune chapter 3 and 4, they ended up becoming launch titles for the Switch 2. And Toby Fox, I don't think he has the power to delay the Switch 2. So, obviously just delayed chapter 5, so we didn't really get that nice little trilogy of Chris, Susie, Ralsei chapter. Anyways, I think this chapter's gonna be like very related to Ralsei. In what department, I don't really know. I think obviously there was that tweet about the flowers, so he might get some like character development. You know, he goes between like all 7 of the flowers, has some little like side quests with them. Something, I guess. Either way, Ralsei's gonna have a hat in this chapter, ooh, and there's gonna be a lot of character development for him. That's kind of one prediction I think I have. Also, this feels very delayed. A lot of these I don't have like too much like solid proof for. I think it's mainly like thematic stuff. I guess that makes sense. Anyways, next prediction. It's more just like a weird little thing I kind of want to throw around. Noelle's place in this chapter is very confusing to me. Because obviously we have the screenshot that shows her at the festival. Obviously she was going to be at the festival. But none of the Dark World footage from the trailer showed Noelle being there, which obviously, once again, gonna bring up the newsletter. Toby Fox did say the trailer was meant to be like not very exciting, and I think showing Noelle in the Dark World, that's crazy. That's a huge piece. You know, she wasn't in chapter 3, obviously, and then chapter 4's Dark World she wasn't in there for. So you know, that's, oh my god, she's back. Whoa, that'd be a crazy thing to have in a trailer, and that'd be like a big surprise to kind of spoil. So I get why that wouldn't be in the trailer. But also, there's like a decent amount of footage here. I think the footage that we have in this trailer is definitely like an intro area. Like there's like this like a lot of stuff in this like dark swamp. It's all wet. It's really dark, and a lot of the intro areas to the chapters are in these like dark areas until you approach like, oh, the main big city area of the chapter. Whoa! You know, you have the cliffs. You have this weird area in chapter 2. I really don't know what to call this. Chapter 3, you also have these cliffs. And then chapter 4, there's just it's also like the end of the dark world. You know, that little intro area. Either way, every chapter has these like intro areas. I think this swamp is chapter 5's, and Noelle is either ahead or she hasn't joined the dark world yet. Not 100% sure. But also the weird route. I'm going to talk about that later. I have a lot to say about the weird route. The weird route is going to be pretty interesting in this chapter, and I'm going to leave it there. But generally, I do think Noelle is going to be in this dark world. I don't know how big of a part she's going to have to play, because obviously Ralsei's still in these battles, so she's not going to be a party member. Unless, as I said earlier, Ralsei does a lot of stuff with these flower characters. And then we have Noelle here. We kind of swap between them, I guess. I don't know. Either way, I think Noelle's going to be in this chapter. It's just really weird to try and figure out how she fits in right now because it's not out yet. So you can't know that. Prediction number 3. Oh, this one's also holiday related. Rudy's going to die. I think just generally, it's been kind of built up. You know, he's sick, and throughout each of the chapters, he's kind of slowly gotten worse. Chapter 4, he was especially in rough shape. I don't think he's just going to die for the sake of dying. I think his death is going to be like a big emotional moment for Noelle, which is why I'm really hoping she's in this chapter. The game has a lot like pointing at Noelle being like an important character, and so if she's not an important character, then I don't know. She is, but it's weird. So I think Rudy dying would definitely be like a big moment. And also, if he's dying/dies, Gerson has already set up Lightners being able to be brought back. And so if Noelle's in a dark world again, that kind of has that thing of like, oh, hey, what'd you guys do in these other dark worlds? And Caesar brings up, well, we there was this old man that we had. He's Gerson, boom. You know, the guy that's dead. So, you know, people who die, you can bring them back with dark worlds. And it's going to be like a little offhand comment. Noelle's going to be like, huh, that's weird. And later on, Rudy's going to be dying. And then Noelle's going to be like, oh my god, I'm going to Gerson boom my dad. Besides that, I'm really sad about it. I like Rudy as a character. It has to happen. And I'm so sorry, Rudolph. But also, Rudy dying makes me think Asgore's not going to die. That was kind of another prediction I used to have before I realized, well, if both these dads are going to die, that's really fucked up. To leave both these families without a father figure. And Asgore, I think he still kind of has some stuff to do after, you know, the Dark Worlds. I think there's going to be like a whole thing. I don't think he's going to be redeemed. Either way, Asgore, get out of here. I have nothing to say to you, you weeaboo piece of shit. Anyways, fourth prediction. This one's a lot more vague. This one, like, there's, like, some stuff for, but also it's, like, I don't have any, like, too hard of concrete evidence. I think we might get Card Kingdom again. Like, not, like, I don't mean, like, you know, the Flower Dark World that is obviously Asgore's. He made this thing. I'm not saying, like, that's gonna be Chapter 1 again, even though we have Floridin. The weird floral Rudins. No, I mean, like, we're gonna go back to the closet, but it's gonna be reopened, and maybe some of the Darkeners are gonna be thrown back in there, so they're, like, changed up a bit. And, like, honestly, okay, really the only big piece of evidence I have for this is, one, if Ralsei gets his hat back, you know, obviously it'd be kind of neat to, you know, run that back with Hat Ralsei again. But also, two, for some reason in this newsletter, this sprite of a dark candy tree was shown, and the only thing I could possibly make of that is, oh, Chapter 5, Dark Candy Tree. We're going back. And generally, I think one really interesting way to kind of separate Chapter 5 from some of the previous chapters would be, hey, let's do 2 Dark Worlds, but they're going to be really different. Because obviously, Chapter 4, I guess it had 3 Dark Worlds if you want to count First Sanctuary, Second Sanctuary, and Third Sanctuary. I half count Third Sanctuary because that's like a weird blob of like both the previous ones, you know, fused together. So then if you want to, like, really elevate the stakes, oh, there's another, you know, like, another, like, completely different Dark World. I think that'd be interesting to mess around with, yada yada. As I said, I don't have too much to really back this up. I just think it'd kind of be, like, one interesting and also weird newsletter thing. So this one's less of a prediction, more of, like, me trying to be really cool and different and be ahead of the curve. We're going to talk about Friend. For those that don't know, there's been a really common, like, image of a smiling face with pink and yellow eyes, and pink and yellow is a big theme this chapter. The field of pink and gold is how Gerson described this chapter, and obviously in the trailer, and in its like final shot, there's a lot of pink and there's a lot of gold in these flowers. Oh, it's a field of pink and gold. There we go. But then there's this cat. Okay, there's two scenes that friend is shown to be, cat-like. I think there's some evidence in chapter 2, but I'm not 100% sure on what that evidence really was. The only thing that really comes to mind is Spamton having the element puppet/cat, pink yellow eyes, I guess. And also I guess there's Pluie. Hi, Pluie. Anyways, pink and gold is a huge theme this chapter, and so because of that, I think a lot of people are kind of being like, oh hey, friend, this evil cat with the pointed tail of hell. But my main issue with that is I just don't see how an evil cat that's just evil. I just don't really see how that character would fit too well into the story. Now, obviously, it's been kind of foreshadowed. Chapter 3's mantle boss kind of used them as like little minions. Once again, also, chapter 3, there's like this this intro scene where Ralsei was talking about the concept of darkness, the idea of darkness, and this weird blob shows up, kind of looking like one of the amalgamates from Undertale, but it's a cat, and it's gonna be on screen right now, obviously. And so, yeah, it's friend. Oh, the main thing I'm saying is there's been obviously a lot of like build up and kind of foreshadowing, but I don't see it. I really just don't see an evil cat kind of showing up, being like, oh, it's just so evil. But the main thing is like, obviously he would be a shadowed figure that would appear in the last few chapters of the game. But we already have a few of those we have to deal with. There's December. December, I think, is kind of this background, maybe not so evil character, but either way, this kind of background thing that's kind of secret and weird. That's like, we got to figure out. And there's also Gaster. And so I think having a third character alongside those two would just be really a lot of like secret background characters. I think it'd be a little muddied, I think, I honestly, I do trust in, Toby Fox. I think chapter 3 and 4 were like really well put together story-wise. Maybe not so much gameplay-wise in chapter 3. That's a different rant. I might do another video about that later. Anyways, I feel like I've kind of talked in a circle here. Maybe a little fast. Maybe this is incomprehensible. Yeah, generally for friend, I just don't think we're going to get that figure. I don't think we're going to have this pink and yellow cat that's all evil and stuff. Secret boss, I don't know. I have kind of other opinions on the secret boss. But there is one situation that I would potentially accept friend as a character and as a thing and as a concept in Deltarune. Now, I have so much to say about the weird route, but I'm going to try not to say too much. But obviously, chapter 5, it's going to have its own weird route. It's going to be heavily based around the festival. And maybe the Dark World if Noelle goes to the Dark World. The main thing that I think Noelle in the Dark World would do is skip a lot of like this like character development that Ralsei would have. Maybe some like little character moments. Clearly, a large part of the weird route is skipping character moments at this point. Chapter 4 especially showed that with skipping that like whole section of Susie and Noelle getting close together, instead of replacing that with Susie being isolated. So for the festival, I do think Susie's gonna be completely isolated in the weird route. Maybe she'll go to Castletown and just hang out with Ralsei. That's really sad, actually. Oh my god. But aside from that, the main two things that I think are interesting with the weird route in chapter 5 is shadow crystals are coming to an end in this chapter, and so I think that's going to be the huge next step for the weird route. I think that the shadow crystals are very, very heavily related to the weird route. The main thing being, whenever you use the piece of glass, which is the shadow crystal, in the light world, you see kind of like this alternate reality. You see through Chris, you see Susie being upset, and you see Noelle being close to, assumedly, Chris. I think that's kind of showing off the weird route, and a large part of shadow crystals is kind of pushing things to the extreme, kind of getting as much as you can from the game, getting as strong as you can in the game. And I think also it'd help a lot with like character development stuff, especially for Susie. I think in the weird route, if Susie has to go through that, Gerson fight, that's like a really, really strong character moment for her, and especially if that can come back later, that'd be very nice. Point is, I think the next step of the weird route, we get the last shadow crystal in chapter 5 that lets us make the pure crystal, and then something with the twisted sword. But the deal with the twisted sword is you need a thorn ring. But obviously, Noelle has the thorn ring, so what do you do then? We can't really take the thorn ring off Noelle, because then she's going to get less strong. So that's why I believe, whether it be the main route or the weird route, you're going to get a thorn ring. Now, there's two main pieces that I think really kind of make me believe this, or kind of like led me to this conclusion. Because it sounds crazy, it sounds stupid, and it is. The first main piece is obviously the flower symbolism. Thorns, roses, yeah. But also, not just that, that's a really thin connection. The first version of the Chapter 4 Weird Out cutscene with Noelle, where you equipped her with the thorn ring, had a rose on it. Another thing that kind of makes me think this is, in Chapter 2, Susie has this line talking about Dragon Blazers 2, and quote, your sister getting cursed, but she's still a member of your party. I think in Chapter 5, in its normal route, if Noelle is a part of it, she's going to get the Thorn Ring equipped, but she's going to, that's going to be the curse. I think it's, I'm not really too sure how its effects will impact Noelle in this main route, because a large part of the Thorn Ring in the weird route is being able to control Noelle as the player. Maybe some other being, some other person takes control of Noelle in the main route, and that's kind of how she's like cursed. The only way I would really accept Friend is this, there's the Spamton parallels, the pink and yellow eyes, the puppet and cat element, is if Friend is the one that does the Thorn Ring in the main route, but then Spamton is the one that does it in the weird route, I guess. I still don't like the idea of Friend. That's like the main way that I would really accept it. I think the one thing that's kind of like an issue with this Noelle Thorn Ring main route, I guess theory or concept, is it would kind of put her in this damsel in distress kind of situation, which sucks for her character. I really don't like taking away that kind of like agency from her character. But also, I think if that is something that happens, we see this item take control of Noelle, and something happens later in the game where we as the player would have liked to have control over Noelle, and that kind of leads us down to the weird route to make her stronger and all of that. That Thorn Ring that was used to control her, being something that we can sequence break in Chapter 2 to get early, to then take control of Noelle ourselves, that is a very interesting concept to me. I think, I keep saying, this thing is interesting. Oh, wow. But no, I do think that would be like a quite satisfying way to kind of explain how or what the Thorn Ring is in Chapter 2. Why it's there, because that is such like a weird item to have. Just it's a ring of thorns in this like cyber computer city. That makes no sense. That's weird as hell. But if you can connect that to something that happens later in the game, sequence breaking it to get it early, I think that would work out really well. And I think kind of last few things I have to say about Chapter 5's weird route. I think I've said some stuff about the festival, and then also I'm going to talk about this weird little website page. I think a lot of people are assuming, oh, the weird route's gonna end because this website page that's talking about the weird route, it stops after 5. That's because of the, as I said earlier, the Chapter 3, 4, and 5, releasing all at once. Because, that's got kind of delayed, pushed back, or whatever, this page still says Chapter 5 because, that was meant to advertise Chapter 5. But obviously that didn't happen, so now the page just shows Chapter 5 because, that's the next chapter, foreshadowing stuff and all that. And also, if, let's say, for example, this page was to show all the chapters' weird routes, I think that would be lame. I think that would be kind of boring to like spoil like how the weird route happens in Chapter 6 and 7. Because I think Chapter 5's ending, either main route or weird route, it's gonna be something insane. Because it's gonna be something really sad, something like really crazy. So obviously a large part of Chapter 5 is kind of distracting yourself, kind of avoiding the issue at hand, looking at the sun one last time before it sets or whatever. Maybe the roaring, I don't know. I really can't think of much else that I kind of want to say about Chapter 5. Hey, this is Gobulos while editing. I realized, right as I was about to hit the publish button on the video, that I completely forgot to make any single guesses on the Shadow Crystal holder. So, let me do that real quick. So, there's kind of two candidates I think are interesting to look at that I think are relatively likely. Obviously, I'm not going to say Friend. I just went on a whole rant talking about Friend. But the two that I think are likely, one, Asgore. Now, I think immediately people are going to say, well, he was talking about having a black shard, not a shadow crystal. And that's true. But I think it's likely that he has both of them. Both a shadow crystal and a black shard. Firstly, kind of like in-game, kind of gameplay-wise, I think it would be, assuming Asgore is the main boss of the chapter, I think having him hold the shadow crystal so that, you beat him, you finish the chapter, you get that shadow crystal, no matter what you do, you're guaranteed one shadow crystal. And if you bring that to Shaman Castletown, they can be like, oh, there might be more in the past chapters or something. Ooh. That being said, I don't think shadow crystals are going to be required for, like, the true ending of Undertale, of Deltarune. Fuck. But, either way, I think it is important to, like, introduce players to the idea of shadow crystal bosses. They don't beat the whole game before finding out about these really cool bosses. And next up, I think a more, like, kind of loreful reason. From this Blue Sky post that Toby Fox made, John kind of goes on about, like, what shadow crystals are. They say that they're will, and then it's kind of implied that next up they say determination, potentially. I don't know. Asgore, in this game, is a very willful, determined person, willing to, like, prove himself that, hey guys, look, I'm right, I'm not actually tweaking. So I think that could fit pretty well for Asgore. Next up, this one I'm really not that confident in, but I think it's interesting to maybe bring up Chris. Now, it sounds really stupid because why wouldn't the player just, dig in Chris's pocket and say, oh, hey, look, a shadow crystal? But the main thing that makes me kind of think Chris could be a candidate is from this, like, ERAM dialogue. ERAM kind of implies that Chris is also looking for the shadow crystals. So maybe they already have one. I don't know how we would get it. I don't know how that fight would unfold. I don't know. But I do think it's pretty likely that the last Shadow Crystal is going to be a little unorthodox. I guess even Chapter 3's was pretty unusual. Either way. But the most likely situation to me, I think, is that the Shadow Crystal holder is very likely just a new Darkner, a new character we haven't met yet. If it's a Darkner, I definitely do not think it's Sham, because they wouldn't have one. I don't know. But actually, though, I just wouldn't be surprised if it's just a character we don't know yet. But I still think it's interesting to kind of like throw out these like ideas and concepts, especially of like a Lightner being a Shadow Crystal holder. That I think that'd be really interesting, especially if it is one of those two candidates. If there were to be a third one besides those two, I don't know. Anyways, back to the video. I just feel like I had to make this segment. I'm really excited about it. I think kind of like tonally what it's doing with this like, hey guys, let's try and avoid the issues at hand. And let's just have fun, guys. Let's go on a nice little fun adventure. Just forget about all our problems and have some fun. But then going into this like, you know, Noelle subplot of maybe she gets controlled, cursed or whatever, and we have to solve that. I think that'd be very, I'm gonna say the word, I'm gonna say interesting. I have no other word to really describe how I feel about this game. I love Deltarune a lot. I'm really excited for this next chapter. The game's cool. It's gonna do some cool stuff. I think that's kind of it that I have to say for now. I think I said most of my stuff that I want to say. All in all, there's no friend. Please subscribe. I need this. I don't know how many more Deltarune videos I'm gonna make. I think the next Deltarune video I make is gonna be more of like a critique and critical look at Deltarune, or it's gonna be a Minecraft video because I want that Minecraft YouTuber money. Yes! Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good day. And if you're currently watching this at nighttime, fuck you.